In the last 20 years, the United States has lost enough farm acreage to make another New York state. That means less acreage for food production. And unless you want to have all your food grown in a hothouse or hydroponics, then we better keep these farms as real farms.
The mission of Woodlands Lake is actually pretty simple. It's to preserve farms and farmlands, and specifically we focus on operating farms. If we want to preserve agriculture in the future in our communities, one of the basic assets is farmland.
It's really the only way to tie ground up and keep it agricultural. The state isn't going to do it and the federal government isn't going to do it. I'm Steve Poyser, 77 years old. We live at 13178 County Road 14, Middlebury, on a 160-acre farm, which we inherited 12 years ago.
And I'm his wife, Sheila, and we always dreamed of living on a farm and never thought our dreams would come true, and they did.
This acreage has been farmed since the 1840s. In the early 1860s, this whole area was bought up by the Mather family, who lived in a house across the road. And they gave this farm to their daughter in 1889 with the house, barn, and the granary. And she lived here until 1907 or so, when my great aunt and uncle bought the place. And then my cousin Norval and his wife inherited it in 1945. Same thing with us in 2011. So 3 generations in well over 100 years.
You did whatever it took to make sure that this never gets developed and it always stays green.
This is a real sociological problem. You have open land, which is good for farming, and open land is also good for building.
The mission of Woodlands Lake is actually pretty simple. It's to preserve farms and farmlands, and specifically we focus on operating farms. If we want to preserve agriculture in the future in our communities, one of the basic assets is farmland.
Wasn't for them, there wouldn't be any tying up of land. It'd be subject to development, period. And as land pressure, like there is here, gets worse and worse, there would be no way to protect it.
It'll just be a country farm in the middle of a bunch of subdivisions.
And development pressures, especially in Elkhart County, have pushed the price of that farmland up to the point where it's often more economically viable for farmers to just sell the farmland in this county and move elsewhere. So when we create a conservation easement, we're thinking not only about today, we're thinking about 20 years, but we're also thinking 50 years ahead. What is agriculture going to look like? And how do we design this conservation easement so that we can allow that farm to adapt to whatever agriculture looks like 50 years from now? Our continuing challenge is to share with farmers what it means to create a legacy of that farmland that goes beyond this generation, and why that's important to the community.
We have 108 acres here of the 160 that is what we refer to as tillable. That means you farm it. In the last 20 years, the United States has lost enough farm acreage to make another New York state. That means less acreage for food production. And unless you want to have all your food grown in a hothouse or hydroponics, which the taste and nutrition isn't as good as the stuff actually grown in the ground, then we better keep these farms as real farms. And this is almost the last one in this area of the township.
You know, there's an old Indian saying that someday water is going to be more valuable than gold. And they said that many, many years ago. And all of a sudden, it sort of seems like that could happen right here in good old USA. We share this with all of our friends, and they bring friends, and we've made trails through the woods, and you try to get the young people to have an appreciation of nature.
To us, this is paradise. If you want to maintain paradise, which is what my cousin thought it was, and so do we, that's what you have to do. Tough decision, but worth it.
Well, you just have to love the land, which is disappearing into parking lots.